Hello, all, and welcome to the Leafs Forever podcast. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown. This is not Andrew Piluk at the moment, but Andrew is here with us, and I'm going to take the lead on this video a little bit. Andrew said that it's okay with him if I take over the channel for a second here, but we got some Leaf stuff to talk about today. We got some hockey stuff to talk about today, maybe some life stuff. You know, the
Yes.
summer it's picking up and it's going by pretty quickly. And maybe we should take a break from hockey, but we're not those types of people.
Nope.
So we're gonna jump right into it. Andrew, we heard some news about Mitch Marner last week, and maybe that's not the greatest place to take the show to start, but it is what's on everybody's mind, right? If you're looking for Leafs news and stuff like that, that's the number one thing that everybody wants to know because that's the most pressing thing that needs to happen before the season starts, right?
Yep.
So Andrew, we heard some news on that. I'm gonna let you talk a little bit here. It's your channel. So what happened with Mitch Marner last week?
Well, there's actually been a couple things because some tweets were actually put out today by Bob McKenzie. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but the stuff that happened last week, I'd assume you're talking about the Columbus stuff. Um, there's just been a lot of reports that we all know Marner's camp is talking with other teams regarding an offer sheet. And it's looking like a lot of people were pinpointing the Islanders or the Montreal Canadiens as the two teams that everybody thought he was going to go to. Now, the team that's being added to this is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, I actually didn't think of the Columbus Blue Jackets as a fit, and I still don't. The reason why is because I'm not sure Mitch Marner would want to go and play for them. I don't believe that they're going to have a great season. I know that this would put him at the forefront and basically make him the guy of that team. But the reports coming out were that it could have been over $12 million on a quite long-term deal. I believe it was, 6 or 7 years that they were offering.
12.5 million in 7 years.
Yeah, and there's been a bunch of different offer sheets apparently with different term on them, but I just don't know how this would make a lot of sense. The only way I could see this making sense is something that will relate to what was tweeted out today by Bob McKenzie, in that maybe Mitch Marner is just trying to sign an offer sheet to see if the Leafs will match, just to end all these conversations. Now, the stuff that came out today, I'm not sure if you're aware of it from Bob McKenzie, was that the Toronto Maple Leafs right now might be at a little bit of a standstill with Mitch Marner because of the fact that they're not really making any progress according to what everybody has been saying, and Elliot Friedman was saying it the other day too. And Bob McKenzie put out the notion that maybe the Leafs are just waiting for a team to offer sheet him just to see if he signs it, and if that's the case, if they feel that the number is still okay for them and they can make a corresponding move, then they're just going to match it and then go from there, so the negotiations are over, or they'll take the compensation. So it's looking like the Leafs are looking for a finish to all of this. Kyle Dubas said that this was priority number one to get this done by July 1st. It is not July 1st, it's July 15th. And it's looking like the Marner camp is being very difficult to work with, which is kind of unfortunate. We all kind of expected this to go a little bit longer than expected, but I think that this is going to take way longer than people expect, and the Leafs might want an offer sheet to happen. That's what Bob McKenzie was saying. So what do you think about that?
I mean, if this had to be solved through an offer sheet, that would be a lot quicker of a solution, but it's definitely not one that I want to see happen. I want Mitch and the team to come to terms together and get this solved so that there's not any hurt feelings moving forward, right? Like, you don't want Mitch walking into the dressing room on a daily basis and having that weigh in over his head, because it definitely affected Willie to start last season, and we all know about Nylander and how he performed last season. We don't need to rehash that. It wasn't something that was enjoyable. It was very stressful for the player, his coach, teammates, and especially on the fans, because we just want to watch this team and we just want to enjoy them, right? We've gone through a long rebuild. We've had a little bit of playoff excitement. I don't want to call it success yet, But we're 4 years into having the band together, and we haven't really been able to enjoy the past 2 seasons, I'd say, because of all this contract nonsense. So, I mean, if the Leafs are at the point where they would like an offer sheet or they would welcome it just so that there's a solution to the problem, then I mean, I'm open to it. Definitely not at 12 and a half by 7. The Leafs would definitely not match that. But another thing that Elliot Friedman said on the 31 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick last week is that he thinks that Mitch Marner wants to be a Leaf. His heart is in Toronto. He just wants to be a Leaf at an Austin Matthews type of number. And
Yep.
that might not be something that's possible. But when you really break down the financials of things, I mean, we saw the Sebastian Aho offer sheet a couple of weeks ago, right? Sebastian
Yep.
Aho is going to make $21 million in the first 12 months of that contract. That's absolutely insane. The Leafs have the two highest paid players in the NHL next season by in terms of just pure salary. It's John Tavares and Austin Matthews at $15.9 million. There's no reason to believe that the Leafs can't front load the first 2 seasons of those deals with huge signing bonuses, and Marner could possibly walk away with close to $30 million in the first 12 months of signing that contract. And I think that's the biggest advantage that the Leafs have. I don't think that very many other teams in the league can do something like that. So
No.
I mean this is not like the Nylander negotiation, right? The reported offer from the Leafs to Marner before or in and around the draft was $10 million by 8 years. Marner turned it down,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, Kyle Dubas is not lowballing Mitch Marner by any means. The signing bonuses are definitely in there. That's something that's a given, especially with the Leafs nowadays. It seems like every single player that they signed lately has signing bonuses in their deal, and heavy ones for the first season or the first 2 years with Kasperi Kapanen, Andreas Johnsson, Alexander Kerfoot. So there's no reason to believe that Kyle Dubas is lowballing Mitch Marner here. It's just Mitch Marner's camp being difficult, like you stated a couple of times. And the one thing that I will come back to, and I'll say that again for anybody that missed it, $30 million in the first 12 months of that deal. That's unfathomable.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
That's a lot of money. And just to add to your point there about Mitch Marner wanting to be a Leaf, I'd also like to add the fact that according to, I believe it's Aaron Portzline, he does a lot of work for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mentioned this in my video a couple days ago or whenever I posted it about Mitch Marner, that teams are getting word that it looks like Marner is kind of scared to sign an offer sheet at the same time because he's worried the Leafs won't match it. So this is the thing that I keep trying to bring up, and I also brought this up in my video. If you believe Mitch Marner's in the driver's seat, he's not whatsoever. Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the driver's seat 1,000,000%. And the reason why that is because Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Morgan Rielly, William Nylander, Kasperi Kapanen, Andreas Johnsson, the list goes on and on. The Leafs love Mitch Marner. He's a fantastic player. But this will not make or break this team. They're still going to be a fantastic team. Mitch Marner wants to be a part of it. All of his buddies are there. They have a brotherhood. A lot of those guys are all together and they're having fun all the time. They're playing hockey and then hanging out outside of the rink. And, you know, the city of Toronto loves him. So I really don't believe that this is going to come down to Mitch leaving. At the same time, I do have my doubts, but I just think that it's getting a little ridiculous here that Mitch can't, and Mitch and his team can't come to Kyle Dubas and meet them kind of in the middle at least. And maybe they have to go to a shorter term deal. Like maybe it has to be 3 years. But then that number, like I kept saying, that number keeps going down and down and down if you get into these shorter term deals. So I don't know if Mitch still wants like this massive money on a 3-year deal. But if this is the case, Kyle Dubas just has to see when he signs that big contract if he feels like matching it. And if not, 4 first-round picks are coming to the Leafs.
You mentioned the term, and that's something that I'd really like to break down here. Because if Mitch Marner were to sign a 3-year deal, that would still make him an RFA at the end of that deal, and he would have arbitration rights. He currently does not have arbitration rights. And I mean, I really wish he would, because then we can just get a third party person in there and we could just get this settled and done and over with that way. Right?
Yeah,
4 years would walk him right to unrestricted free agency, which is probably more favorable, which is definitely more favorable for Mitch. It's something that the Leafs want to avoid. A 5 year contract would make him, Matthews, and Nylander all do at the same time. And the 6 year contract is so far off in the conversation because in his mind, on a 6, 7, or 8 year deal, he wants that 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 12, $13 million range of that, to be the highest paid player on the Leafs. He wants that Austin Matthews type deal. So when the Columbus Blue Jackets go up to Mitch Marner and offer him 12 and a half by 7, he says no, not because it's not enough money, but because it's way too long of a contract. Mitch Marner would sign 12 and a half by 5, 12 and a half
yeah,
by 3, 12 and a half by 4, or something like that. But then, like you said, the shorter the term that contract is, the lower that money has to be. On a 3 or 4 year deal, the most money that I'm comfortable giving Mitch Marner is $9 to $9.5 million. That's
yeah.
it.
I think that I think it's gonna come down to 9.5 for like over 3 years. Like I think that the AAV is gonna be 9.5, which is an overpayment. But at the same time, it gives the Leafs a tiny bit of breathing room for 3 years when it comes to maybe being able to move on from a contract to add somebody better on defense, like Cody Ceci moving on from the Leafs, which seems to not be happening. But uh, I don't know. I think this Marner stuff is getting borderline ridiculous with some of the stuff we're hearing. And for a guy like Bob McKenzie, while he's on vacation, to tweet out today that he's still hearing that the Leafs are basically like, okay, well, let's see the offer sheet then. If the Leafs are really saying to teams, well, then go ahead and do it and let's see what happens. And I mean, we haven't heard anything else today. What happened last week when the report was, oh, well, there's an offer sheet coming today? Seems like that was a while ago. We haven't seen anything. And it also seems like Mitch Marner's turning down these offers. So what's the deal here? If you want to get something done, I don't know. The term has to be right now. The discussions have to be 2 to 3 years. I can't see how they're talking about anything else.
No, and I can't either. So that's definitely enough Mitch Marner talk for
Yes.
one day. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about the Maple Leafs goalie situation. I don't know how in depth you want to go on this, but right now for next season, the Leafs have Michael Hutchison and Garrett Sparks under contract to be their backup goalies.
Yep.
Now, Garrett Sparks had his downs last season. There weren't too many ups. Michael Hutchison was okay, but he kind of scares me when he's playing goalie.
Yeah.
What are the Leafs going to do for their backup situation?
It's going to be Hutchinson to start the year with Garrett Sparks in the press box, and Garrett Sparks will be the backup for the Leafs. I 100% believe it. They're investing their time into Garrett Sparks. And instead, and I think I said, I don't know if I said this in a podcast or a video or a conversation. I talk about the Leafs and hockey way too much, and I don't know when I'm saying things. But I was saying, like, as a goalie, it's like, first of all, they take forever to develop. And Garrett Sparks has been pretty good wherever he's played. Like, he was good in the OHL, he's been fantastic in the AHL. And I believe the Leafs still feel like they're investing their time into him, and all this time that they've spent on him, they're not just going to sell low on him and get rid of him. Although we heard the shopping Sparks talk, I think that that was just a kick in the butt for him. I don't think that they really want to get rid of him, especially if they're going to be selling super low. Because if you would have talked about Garrett Sparks in a trade package after he won, like, what was it, the AHL Goalie of the Year,
Mm-hmm.
there would probably be a lot of teams that Garrett Sparks in a package probably gets you a decent haul. And I'm not talking about him by himself. I'm talking paired with somebody else. Like, that's a sweetener for a lot of deals. And I don't think that the Leafs are interested in selling low. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like the Leafs at the end of the season by taking him away from the playoffs and saying, listen, you're not going to play anyways. Let's work with you and let's see what the problems are. They're still investing their time. They still believe that he can rebound. And I honestly think he will. As much as last season wasn't exactly a coming out party for him, I think that this year probably will be.
And the one thing that I'd like to add is that when teams sign players and they invest in players, they're not just investing in the on ice product. They're investing in that person themselves. And when
Yeah.
you look at Garrett Sparks, the person and his history and his road to the NHL, it speaks volumes to how he's been able to overcome and keep plowing through obstacles and really, really work hard to where he is right now. When he
Yeah.
was first drafted out of Illinois University, people said that he was overweight. He was too big. He needed to lose weight. He went out, lost weight, came into camp with the Marlies, was second string to Antoine Bibeau. I don't know how many of you remember that name.
Boy.
But he stood the test of time. He outlasted Antoine Bibeau. He got the starting job with the Marlies the season afterwards, and he flourished, right? He was absolutely amazing. He played out of his mind. He stopped the puck with his bare hand in the Calder Cup playoffs. This is a guy that thrives off the crowd. He thrives on being that guy. He thrives on having that responsibility. So maybe what's in order for Garrett Sparks is a change of scenery, but I think that would be really, really unfortunate because to give up on this guy that's prevailed numerous times throughout his career so far would be horrible, right? So I
Yeah.
think Garrett Sparks comes back this year. He knows he wasn't very good last year, but I think that he has the confidence and faith in himself that he's gonna put in that work and he's gonna come back next season and he's gonna show everybody why he's going to earn that job, not be
Yeah.
given it like he was last season. He's going to earn it.
I'd agree. I really do believe that he can do it. I still believe. And again, like, there's always going to be some people that say, I have a bit of a bias. I've talked about it in videos before. I've talked to Garrett Sparks on multiple occasions. Him and I went to the same high school. Obviously, he's a couple years older than me. I can't remember how many years older than me he is, but he's a great guy, and I think that the Leafs are investing in him as a person as well. I'd agree with you there. I think that they know that he's a good guy. They know that he's willing to put in the work, and I think he's gonna be great for them. I really do. I still think that he has a shot to be good for them for the time being because they are developing, Scott and Wool. Like I don't believe that they're trying to get Sparks to be a starter. I just believe that they want to have a solid backup option. And unfortunately, in a couple of years, if we have two brand new goalies in the system that are both going to be making their way up, Sparks will probably be a guy that gets moved on from if he isn't already moved on from the Leafs within the next year or so.
Well, quick trivia question for you, Andrew. Who is the longest tenured member in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization?
Garrett Sparks.
It was Nazem Kadri, and now it's Garrett Sparks. And
Yep.
for some people, that's shocking. But for others, when you just think about it for a second, I mean, yeah, this is the guy that was, drafted in like 2011 or something
Yeah.
like that. The Leafs have invested a lot of time and a lot of assets into him, and I don't think they're going to give up on him. He's got a longer leash than what a Michael Hutchison would have, right?
Yeah.
Because he's their homegrown product.
Yep.
So, moving from one former Marley to a current Marley, or maybe Marlies, who do you think is going to step up from the Marlies this season and make an impact on the Maple Leafs roster?
I think it's safe to say everybody penciled in Marchment to come in. I would think that he's probably a guy that's going to get a long look from the Leafs. But with the crop of forwards they have, I keep looking and thinking, damn, like maybe the Leafs don't have room for a guy like that. Maybe Babcock's more invested in the Russians that they signed in, the free agency that they got, the Russian free agents. I think that a lot of people are overlooking some of the guys that these minor signings that they've made. None of these guys stand out like, oh my God, he's going to be fantastic. But Mikheyev is a guy that a lot of people think is going to start with Matthews and Nylander to start the year. So I like right away that takes away a spot from a Marley. Maybe a guy like Engvall. I know a lot of people are high on Timashov. I wonder if he finally gets a shot. I thought for sure a guy like Timashov or Bracco was going to be dealt. Maybe they still will be, but I don't know what the Leafs are thinking there because one of those two guys could probably at least step up to the fourth line. I think Bracco is a guy that's probably going to be a fourth liner or third liner on the Leafs, so he's probably a guy that gets traded. They might sell high on him. So I'm not really sure if the Leafs want to invest in him coming up. So I think a safe bet is probably Marchment. And then, of course, a guy like Timothy Liljegren, if we're talking about defensemen. Some people think that Sandin might push for a spot. What do you think about the defensemen? Like, do you think that both of them could be up? I happen to think they won't be, but do you think that at least one of them is going to start the season? Because I think Timothy Liljegren's probably penciled in to start the year with the Leafs.
I'm gonna plug myself pretty hard here. I did a Maple Leafs armchair GM on my channel, Downtown Sports, last week, and to start the season, I have Timothy Liljegren on the third pairing with Martin Marincin. Now we're not gonna talk about Martin Marincin. He's just there because really there's nobody else, and he
What about
killed.
Andreas Borgman?
Andreas Borgman's an interesting guy, and I'll touch on him after Timothy Liljegren. But I just think, for me, there's a need on that right side. He was supposed to be called up last season in and around the new year, but then he suffered that high ankle sprain. He didn't end up getting to play in the World Junior Championships, and then the Leafs traded for Jake Muzzin, and it just never really materialized from then onwards. And the one thing that I made a really interesting point in my video was that a couple of years ago, Charlie McAvoy made his NHL debut in the playoffs for Boston. He didn't step in from the AHL right into the NHL playoffs. He stepped in from college right into the NHL playoffs, and he's flourished. He's a top pairing defenseman right now, as we've seen over the past two playoff runs. I mean, he's a pest, right? He's really, really good, and that hasn't affected his development at all. And I think for a guy like Timothy Liljegren, and to a lesser extent Rasmus Sandin because he shoots left and he's a year younger, but
Yeah.
these are really, really top end prospects. The way that they've been talked about here in Toronto over the past 6 months, these are guys that are top prospects around the league, especially on defense, for their age and what they've been able to accomplish in the American Hockey League. I don't think it's so unreasonable to put them in that same category as other teams as top prospects,
Right.
right? And I'm not even saying that they're gonna step in, right, their first game and debut in the playoffs. I'm talking about first game of the season, maybe in and around the trade deadline. You play them on the third pairing, behind Morgan Riley and blank Jake Muzzin and blank for maybe like 15-ish minutes a night in a sheltered role. There's no reason to believe, with how well they skate and move the puck, that they can't handle something like that.
Do you think that the Leafs would take a risk and for the first 6 or 7 games of the season play them on the third pairing together? Because I'm under the impression that Babcock might be high on maybe one of them. I think Babcock might be a little more high on Liljegren because he's a right-handed shot. Like, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's the truth, but I feel like because he likes the right-left, so like like they need more right-handed shot guys. I know they just got Cece and they have Barry, of course, but I think that Babcock likes the left-right type of thing. So I'm wondering if they're just going to be like, you know what? Let's just try it out. We've got nothing to lose here. It's the first like 2 weeks of the season. Let's see if Sandin and Liljegren can come in and prove that they can hang around. And if they can, I mean, just let them play. Like, what's the point if they start playing really well and they can develop some chemistry together? Who's to say that the Leafs blue line isn't way better? Because I think it would be. Then you have most people's projections have Riley and Cody Cece as the first pairing or second pairing, because then Barry and Muzzin is likely your best pairing. And then your third pairing is Sandin and Liljegren. I feel like that's pretty solid if you ask me, especially if those two can actually play well. Because if you're looking around and you said you're going to get to Borgman, like the only other guy I can think of that they might want to give a shot to like Borgman, Timo Kivihalmi. That's the guy that they signed, I believe, out of Finland. He's not a guy that I believe is a guy that's gonna play in the NHL. I know that's I don't know if that's rude of me to say, but I feel like he's just a guy that they signed for the Marlies because he does have some upside, but it doesn't seem like it's like a high NHL upside. Like it's mostly a bottom pairing upside. And with the Rosen trade, that opens up a spot for somebody to kick down the door.
I'm just going to keep it short and sweet with Andreas Borgman. I don't think that he fits the mold of the type of players that the Leafs have on defense right now. I know he's that big presence and he throws hits, and that's what we remember of him. He's 24 years old, but I don't think he's as good of a puck mover, or I don't think he's as talented as a puck mover as the rest of those guys on there. And especially, I mean, Mike Babcock's been here. This is going to be his 5th season, right?
Yeah.
Every single season, he's made one guy on the team his project. The first season when he came in, it was Nazem Kadri. The second season was Morgan Rielly, and then for the past 2 years, he's kind of struggled with Zaitsev. But I mean, I really think that this season his project was going to be Travis Dermott, because the Leafs have a real legitimate asset in Travis Dermott. He's injured for the first couple of months of the season, which is obviously going to disrupt that. The only reason why I have Martin Marincin in there with Timothy Liljegren on the third pairing is because Marincin does kill penalties, and that's something that he does decently. The rest of his game is debatable, and I'm not going to talk about that, but I think we can all agree that he's an okay penalty killer. At least he's shown that in the past. And I think when Travis Dermott comes back, I think that we're going to see him put through the ringer this season. I don't think he's going to get any time on the power play. I think he's going to get hard minutes 5-on-5. And I think Mike Babcock is going to try to turn him into a penalty killer.
That's a good bet, but at the same time, I feel like the Leafs don't want to play Marincin too much. I know that what you're saying is, it's true. He can kill some penalties and stuff like that. But I really believe that if they're really going for it, because all the moves that they're making, it's like, okay, like we're going for it now. Why wouldn't you try to get Sandin and Liljegren? Both of them get some wicked experience. If you're high on both those guys, then why are you waiting around? If you think that they can both step in, and if they can't, well, then they're going back to the Marlies. And then you've got a big problem on your hands if they both play awful. But I don't think they will. I honestly think that they could step in not a ton of minutes, and gradually over the season, maybe they pick up some more minutes. I honestly think that they can step in and do a better job than anybody else could on that third pairing. Like, what is the harm in doing that? I don't think that it would ruin any development. I think that Sandin blew everybody out of the water when it comes to who their top prospect is. I really believe that he's a guy that can step in right away. And I don't think he's going to be like crazy effective. I'm not sitting here saying he's just going to come in and rule the game. I think that he's going to come in and do what they need. They need minutes from that bottom pairing. That's not going to screw them over when it comes, to key parts of the game. I think that Timothy Liljegren as well, he's going to gain some experience too, learning from a guy like Tyson Barrie, learning from a Jake Muzzin, learning from Morgan Rielly. Like, these guys are going to learn from really good pros, as Mike Babcock would say. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And say what you want about Martin Marincin, but at least if Marincin's the guy in the press box, Liljegren and Sandin can learn from him too, how it is to be a professional hockey player.
Right, and the only reason let me just clarify myself before I get roasted in the comment section. I don't think that Martin Marincin is the best option. I know. I think that he fits what the Leafs need to start the season. And that's kind of a guy that can come in and kill penalties. So I think that I'm okay with Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. I'm okay with Timothy Liljegren being there right from the start. But I think the earliest that we could possibly see Rasmus Sandin is when Travis Dermott comes back, because then that will give the Maple Leafs another option, and then they can take their foot off the gas with the Marincin, put him in the penalty, not the penalty box, but the press box, or send him back down to the Marlies, and we can be done with that. And hopefully he's just an injury call-up for the rest of the season afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the case, then I think Babcock would rather have a guy like Borgman. Honestly, I really do because Borgman's quicker for one. I don't think he's like some amazing puck mover, but neither is Martin Marincin, and I think Borgman actually would do a half decent job killing penalties. So especially if he's a project for Mike Babcock, and then you can do whatever you want with him. But I just think the Marty Marincin show needs to end. And I mean, I like the guy. He's a nice guy. I've met him before, but I don't think that he should be in the NHL on their third pairing. I'm honestly sick of seeing him play, and that might be harsh, but the guy doesn't do much. So I don't know. I don't think that it makes a lot of sense.
I don't think he should be there either, and if he is, I don't think he'll be there for very long. But the one thing that we had to add, the one thing that we have to add into the conversation is waivers as well. A guy like Andreas Borgman is waiver exempt, and he can be sent down freely as much as you want him to be. A guy like Martin Marincin is on a one-way contract, so I mean, if you're gonna play him to start the season, then you have to be a little bit more careful with waivers.
Well, we're forgetting a name that I can't believe both of us skipped over.
Justin
Ben
Hall?
Harper.
No, I don't want to talk about Ben Harper, Andrew.
Me either, but guess what? I just realized that that's the bottom pairing left defenseman.
No, it is not.
Yeah,
I will fight
yeah.
Mike Babcock at his
I
condo
just
in
realized
Yorkville.
that's who it is.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Andrew, you're talking silly.
It's him.
You've gotten way too much sun today.
I haven't. It's him.
The one interesting thing about Ben Harper that I will point out is that he makes $725,000, and a guy like Martin Marincin makes $700,000. And for a team that's going to be so tight up against the cap, I think that $25,000 is really gonna make a difference here, as we're gonna see.
You're reaching now.
I'm trying. I really don't like Ben Harper.
Me either. He's awful.
He's
sorry,
a turnstile.
Ben Harper, if you ever hear this, I think you're probably a great dude, but sorry, you just shouldn't be playing on the third pairing in the NHL.
Just 1 second. Any ill comment that I make towards a player is never based on the person. It's based on how they play hockey.
Well,
right?
You got to say that to Leaf fans because a lot of them get very angry with you. Shout out to William Nylander one time. We love you here on the Leafs Forever podcast.
Oh, we definitely do love you, and we fully support your jersey change from 29 to 88.
We're not. You know what? I was thinking, wow, when are we going to talk about that? We're not. Sorry, we're definitely not talking about that. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, I don't think we have much else to talk about. Andrew, do you have anything that you wanted to say?
No, and I'm not talking about the jersey number.
Are you sure?
No.
Do you maybe want to take a stroll down memory lane and talk about how valuable Eric Lindros was to this organization?
Yeah, I mean, he was really helpful to the city's doctors and nurses. They got paid quite well to take care of him because that's all he was doing. So,
oh,
I also have a Lindros Leafs jersey, by the way.
You do?
Yes, I do.
That's really, really cool. You know, you have a bunch of Leafs jerseys. I got that Matt Sundin, like, really, really old school St. Pat's jersey that I'm pretty proud of. But that Lindros jersey is definitely pretty cool if you have that.
Yeah, and I got it at a game, and I was like, whoa, like Lindros, my family loved him, and everybody talked about him when I was, younger and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, now he's on the Leafs, and he's not doing anything. Why is this guy not good like he used to be? Oh, no.
Well, before we offend too many people here on the Leafs Forever podcast, I'd say that it's pretty well the end of the podcast, and we should shut things down. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure to click that like button on Andrew's channel and subscribe. Subscribe to me, Steven, on Downtown Sports. Downtown Steven Brown. That is Andrew Piluk. And
Hello.
This is the Leafs Forever podcast. Thank you all for watching. Take care.
Peace.